Here's my story. Be 16 years old. Be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. My uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. My down south cousin suggests that we go out there to camp. They know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. But regardless, we collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp, and it's obvious that something is weird. The air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, kind of like ozone. We think nothing of it, and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. And all of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm, and says hello, and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. We tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and we say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together because there are big animals in the woods here. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang with us, and the man says okay. Now, I'm going to stop Greentexting here because the story is fairly long and that format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football. There's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17 years old, and we ended up just dicking the day away. Eventually, we head back to the camp and pull out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's, and he wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin, Rooster, says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark, so they grab flashlights and take the trail towards Tanner's property. The rest of us just chill. We mix s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. But then, about 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could notice it over the scent of the fire. It had this really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or that someone left a hot plate on. We search the trailers, but nothing's on, and we can all still smell it. And then, all of a sudden, we can hear people booking it down the path towards us. Rooster, Tanner, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. We all panic and run into the trailers as well. They finally end up calming down, but even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is getting lower and lower. So my other cousins say fuck it, and are about to go outside and get the generator out. But Tanner goes, "Fuck no, lock the door, ain't nobody else going outside." He's been crying too. His eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house, and that his father had said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles, just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had been ripped up and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals like that. So Tanner went upstairs and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes usually avoid people anyway. And then they began walking back towards where we were camping. Rooster then finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already stopped, but was now just staring out the window with a weird look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they began to hear weird things in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says she heard something in the bushes right off the trail. They all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing in the woods. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was being. He says that that's when they realized the guy was actually facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start to smell this nasty, coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and there's that dude again, standing there too, backward, but this time slightly closer to the path. So now, they start power walking, and Tanner keeps saying, "I should have taken that fucking rifle." As they're telling their story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, they heard a kind of low gibbering coming from both sides of the wood. As they booked it back to the trailer, the girl said she flashed her light out to the side of them, and they saw something jerking around through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something emerged out of the woods just about 40 yards behind them onto the track. It's then that they just flat out ran as hard as they could back to the trailer. So now, at this point, we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming and hoping that it's just some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. And then, all of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any of that spooky talk right now. But he ignores us and just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman and how this is his woods and we're in it and blah 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 blah. Now, at the time, I had never heard of this Goatman or any of that. But then, a couple of years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a Menem for a roommate. And I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat. And he can shapeshift and get among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and apparently it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is saying, "The Goatman's gonna get in and fucking get us." And now the girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or an animal. And then, all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. To this day, I haven't experienced anything like it. Obviously, smells usually fade away or lessen, but it was literally just there 1 second and not the next. So it's about an hour later, making it about 9 or 10 p.m. We've stopped shooting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home, because if we think we do, they'll chase us through the woods or something crazy like that. Luckily, nothing else weird happens that night, so we stay another night. And for the main part of that night, nothing else happens either. But at about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. And as someone is finishing some too spooky for me story, the smell comes back. It was so fucking strong that one of the girls literally began vomiting. I stood up and could actually feel how clammy the air was. I say we should get inside and that this isn't right. Honestly, we should have fucking left. We all go back inside and we're standing around. And my cousin, once more, is going on and on about how it's the Goatman. My other cousin, Rooster, tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what it is. We end up sitting in there for a while, and the smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking bratwursts for everybody because nobody else wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats each, and we have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog, and then give myself one. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one, and starts grumbling about how I got 2, and everybody else only got 1. And I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12, so there should be 1 left, and that if someone wanted more, they should just open up a new pack and cook some. And that's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tanner just started screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out!" she's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on my cousin what exactly is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books it out. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck was wrong, and I told him. I had started counting us, and there's only 11, and there should have always only been 11. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other very well, nobody noticed that the whole fucking time there was an extra person. You know how when you're just messing around and having a good time that you don't really sweat the small stuff and you don't always notice everything? I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been in there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. What makes it worse is that I couldn't figure out who it was, because I don't think anyone actually interacted with the other person, whoever it was. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all just sitting outside. Eventually, we get big-ass sticks and go back into the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door, and we explain what the fuck happened. The girl says that she realized too, and that when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over to her and said something that she couldn't understand. So we are pretty much just scared as fuck at this point as we huddle together, and eventually I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the other people are also asleep, and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and want to stay in camp. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name, by the way, was Kira, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks that it was something bad, and she just says that she wants to go home, and that she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 people that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, and it's my duty to lock it up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of here. Tanner leaves to go get a rifle, and tells us he'll be back. So now, there's just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., Tanner hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. The only reason I had stopped begging them to leave was because he had went to go get a gun, but now he's not here. At about 5:30 p.m. or so, the one cousin that did stay says the girl Kiara is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then, I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time, the coppery smell has been gone, but now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I mention this to the rest of them, and everybody's laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. And I'm looking at them like I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I ask them, why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira, and she gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how to describe it. It was sort of like if someone with their back turned to you was laughing without making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. And this was late September, so it was fairly hot at the time, but also super chilly some days. Regardless, you could usually hear big-ass geese honking, or some kind of birds, or squirrels chit-chatting, but not today, and not now. I step out the door and tell the girl to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into it, and we lock the door. We pull down all the shades except for one, and put a guy there in a chair to watch Kiara. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. Eventually, the guy turns over to us to say that she's still there, and when he does, there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super loud. My cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other two are just kind of giggling with nervous laughter. Me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tanner, and he's screaming, "Let me the fuck in! Stop fucking playing!" We go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it wasn't Kira standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned towards him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until about halfway to the trailer that he realized she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning in place and inching closer. He just said he ran the rest of the way back to the cabin, thinking it would open. When he got to the door, it was locked. He turned back around, and whatever this thing was now about half the distance to the door. Tanner then looks around the room and gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know, there are only 7 of us in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. This thing had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We look out the window and there's nobody else there, so we recount, and then I go over and ask everyone how many people were in here earlier, and everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are there now?" They all do a count and realize there are now only 7 people in the cabin. Tanner had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo and his rifle. He had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think he would believe him if he told his dad that it was a Goatman. He also says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down here in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but at least I feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever is out there if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks I'm trying to be funny and prank them. She's getting very scared now and says I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and the Goatman just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our trailer without us knowing and mingling with us. And at worst, something bad is in the forest and it doesn't like us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to set and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we really can't get a station out here with anything decent on it. So we turn it off at about the same time that Tanner's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. Now, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights, and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tanner, asking if he's sure that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, and then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. And then he says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" He also asked whether we'd been cooking blood in the cabin, because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We asked him what he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail that Tanner had been using, and found, as he said, one of Yu's guys as buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him, and then she smiled, and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him, and kept lagging a little behind. He said he even asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help, but she just continued to stare. Eventually, he turned around a bend in the trail, but when he went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed that she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We then tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but he just listened, and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says that when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out. So he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. And he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually, it got really strong. And then this girl said something very low that he didn't hear. So he turned around, and when he did, she was right up next to him. He stepped back from her, and it was at this point that he asked her if she was okay. If she wasn't, he offered to carry her back the rest of the way, but she didn't say anything, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because suddenly she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, now we know this shit's real, unless Tanner is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles and we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11 p.m. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's just some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed, so I would shit myself for the rest of my life. At around 11 p.m., the stink of copper turned into an actual gross blood-like smell, like cooked blood and some singed hair. Tanner and his cousin, whose name was Reese by the way, get up instantly and grab their rifles. There's a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice. It sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this weird toned voice,
"Let me in. Stop playing."
Just the sound of it made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just started crying and calling for Jesus. It was just so obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. That's some shit that I never realized until that moment, but all the people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. People have a certain kind of rhythm when talking, but this shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm.
Let me in. Let me in. Stop playing.
So now, I'm in full-on terror mode, and we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In."
Let me the fuck in. In.
For almost 15 minutes, and then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods. Every couple of minutes, it would come back to the door and say something.
Let me in.
Finally, the smell fades away at around 2 in the morning, and Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and he opens the door. He walks outside with the rifle and fires a shot into the air, and says something along the lines of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." And he fires 2 more times. And then, from the woods, right up against the river across the trailer, it sounded like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. And that gibbering and hooting then became screaming. It sounded almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard anything like that. We then hear the brush over in that direction begin to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing up into the building. We lock the door, and from outside, we hear this thing screaming. Reese says that something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, and was crawling towards the cabin, and he shot at it. Pretty much, that was how the rest of the night went. Literally constant screaming for the next 2 hours, and just things moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tanner had been in a chair, watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, but he told me this 2 days later, after this whole ordeal was over. He said that he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped. He'd been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us and that the guy had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized that something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin when there should have been 8. He didn't want to try to shoot at it and have it kill all of us then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and us kill ourselves on accident. So he stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because, from my perspective, nothing else happened. When we woke up, I noticed that Tanner was a little jittery, but we ate some breakfast, packed up, and began walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring my uncle's keys. He told us to just start walking and that he would catch up, which I didn't really want to do. We got a little bit up the path, and when he came running up, we just jogged back up to his house. His cousin then took us home. So, as it turns out, there was a window in the bathroom. Tanner had gone back to lock it up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window, and when he went in there, it was up and open. I'm guessing that this thing had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep and then slipping in and getting in among us. This thing had stayed with us all night, and Tanner told me it walked with us all the way back to his house, and then it sort of lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking back into the woods.